Hey, Anthony. Today we want to talk about how to help Asian investors lower their taxes and diversify their portfolio using the U.S. system. Now, this is for anyone who is interested in becoming a U.S. person, or if you don't want to become a U.S. person, anyone. Basically, if you want to have some of your money invested in the U.S. systems, then this is for you. We find the best way sometimes to explain these things is to use some real-life examples, and I know you have a very good one for this.
Yeah, this is a very... Some of the facts are changed, but it's something that people could easily imagine for those of those in the Far East. We're going to talk about Wu, and he lives in Hong Kong, and he's an executive. He's married. He has 2 children. He has no interest himself in becoming a U.S. person, but he does want to send his children to the U.S., and he's wondering what he should do. He makes about $300,000 as income, and he has some rental income of about $200,000. He has property overseas. He has property in Hong Kong and in Singapore, about $2.5 million. He has securities of $1.5 million, and he has a small life insurance policy of $500,000. Okay, so here's Wu, and he's trying to figure out what should he do. And so he's read that the U.S. is actually one of the best places for tax shelters, which is true. So his first instinct is to say, like thousands, perhaps more than thousands of Asians invest in U.S. real estate, right? And Asians are the reason why the hot markets are hot. In New York, Miami, L.A., the very desirable properties are only going up, because it's that foreign investment money that's inflating those values. Because there are some great income tax advantages to it, that you don't have to pay rental income on it. So as a non-U.S. person, you have that advantage over that U.S. person, right? Because you don't need the same rate of return to end up with the same in your pocket.
Right.
Now, that's sort of the tease in of it. Now, here's the ugly truth that people don't think about the other end, that there is an estate tax due. And not only that, when you do die, you will have a capital gain, or you should have a capital gain that you can no longer defer. So you will have an income tax on any long-term gain that built up, and you will have an estate tax due as well. And our we did that estate tax podcast that we did. That top tax rate is 40%.
Yep.
Right. So there's a horrible surprise. So never title anything in your own name, okay? And not only because you're a target for lawsuits, but really you can get hit with some tax bills, or your estate will, that they didn't see coming. Now, another thing people do is also they know if I'm a non-U.S. person and I invest in the U.S. stock market, I get great benefits there. I don't have to pay taxes on dividends and long-term capital gains. Problem there is, guess what? Your stock securities, that all goes into your estate tax. 40%. Same thing. So, here's the advice right away. You can stop listening here. You've already got millions of dollars worth of advice. Never, ever title any real estate securities in your name. Okay, you're going to want to make sure you have some intermediary. You want to use a U.S. corporation or LLC owned by a foreign company at a minimum. And this is something that we help non-U.S. persons set up, make sure that they're all working right, so that there's not these nasty, the income tax is sort of the easy thing to work around, but that estate tax, which is not, and the estate tax used to be a much bigger discussed deal, but with the exemption rate rather higher than it used to be. In the U.S., it's not talked about the way it used to. It was always, one of the things you were always thinking about, avoiding that when in law school. It was always the thing. And then the exemption kind of got higher. Most people didn't fall into it. But for non-U.S. persons, I think what the exemption you said was like $40,000. So anything over 40, was that right? It was something like that? It was very low.
Yeah, it was, surprisingly.
So anything over that, so it can trigger, even a relatively small amount can trigger a estate tax. And so that's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure we have a good plan for people to avoid that.
Right. So then how do you know what stocks to buy or what real estate to buy?
Yeah, this is something I don't like answering this question, because I've been in the U.S. my whole life. I'm pretty familiar with the real estate markets in various areas. Deal with a lot of companies. Pretty familiar in how to read filings. But I do not want to give anyone investment advice, because I know my specialty here is in tax. That's my world. And what it takes to get this specialized in the tax is what I imagine it to be that specialized in giving stock advice and real estate advice.
Yes.
And something that comes up constantly is we have clients who think they know more than the experts. And, when they have a good year, they're the genius. But when they have the years where they're not getting the returns that they should be, they just sort of excuse it away. And we've had clients who've had millions of dollars worth of property, and we look at their net real estate income, and it's like $2,000. Like,
Wow.
Wait a second, you can't, it didn't lose money. Yes, it did. It did lose money because your opportunity cost. You lost that money could have been earning this, it earned this. I'm sorry, that's a loss. That's a huge loss. And, a lot of the things are getting people a little bit flexible, their minds flexible to alternatives. And that's a lot of times that we spend time convincing people, look, you can't do it the way you want to do it. It's not your way and screw the world. You have to work into the system. If you work into the system, you can find all these savings. If you're going to be inflexible, guess what? You're going to pay taxes and you're going to pay a lot. There's not a lot you can do without doing something incredibly illegal. But if you are flexible and you are open to possibilities, then there's a tremendous amount that you can do to save your capital, to make sure that your capital grows and stays in your family.
Now, one of those things that we were talking about, and we've touched on before, is life insurance as an investment vehicle. And sometimes that scares people.
Oh, God, that's one of I think the hardest thing in the world is to be a life insurance salesman. Because as soon as people hear that, they lock up. And I've asked people, what do you think about life insurance? Like, isn't that a scam? It's not really real. And life insurance is actually one of the best investment vehicles around because the people who are investing that money that is in your portfolio, in the investment portfolio, really know how to get a return. I mean, they have, Mass Mutual, some of the bigger ones in Northeastern, they have great, fantastic managers who are getting high returns. And then also some other people who are involved in private placement life insurance, some money managers there, they know where to get that return. And this is their job. This is what they do all day, every day. We have clients who are just brilliant, in biomed, manufacturing. They're great at what they do. And now they're trying to do everything, including investment. And they have it's like, this is the thing. They remember their good year when, I really know how to pick stock because here's this year I made all this money. And it's like, okay, that was years ago. And by the way, everyone made money that year.
Yeah.
But let's look at it objectively. You're probably not as good as somebody who's doing this. You're probably not as good as you if you were doing this full time. And wouldn't you say there is probably a you doing this full time somewhere in the world? There's someone just like you? Right. So that's the person we want doing this, not you doing your full-time job as it is now.
And what about benefits to life insurance?
Life insurance, and this is the thing, non-U.S. persons can get U.S. life insurance policies. And that's really a great opportunity. Life insurance is an investment vehicle. This is the way it works, okay? Is that your life insurance has a death benefit, right? Well, you're allowed to borrow against that death benefit. And when you borrow against it, your death benefit's tax-free. And when you're borrowing against something, that's tax-free too. So it's growing tax-free. So once it's in, it's in. There's not taxes to be paid, and there's no estate taxes either. There it is. It's pretty nice. Now, the downside is that on smaller policies, there can be a high administrative cost, relatively high. That's sort of the drag on it, or your mortality rate's a little high. And if you're not a great insurable risk, it's not the best thing. But in that case, you might want to do an annuity that has everything but the death benefit. But it's pretty much doing everything else. You would do a private annuity or just a regular annuity, get it into annuity. The huge advantage, and I think this is really the way it is when it's life insurance. It's not death insurance. And think of it like this: if you set yourself into a life insurance policy, and by the way, there hasn't been a U.S. life insurance. I believe I will have to check this. There hasn't been a U.S. life insurance company that has failed since the Civil War, and that the company that did fail was on the losing side, was in the South. So there's something to be said about stability and growth. If you want the sure thing, that you won't have to worry about being there. And I mean, everything else, with all the, the people who were esteemed, the people who were the advisors turn out to be complete frauds all the time. I mean, there's a lot of risk. You have a lot of money, you have a lot of risk, and you don't want to be the person saying, yeah, I lost it all with so-and-so. Mm-hmm. You want to find the sure thing, and that's pretty much what we have here. And the thing is, it's life insurance because no matter where you go, we talked about Wu here. He's in Hong Kong. He doesn't want to come to the U.S. Okay, things might change in his life, right? His children, wants to send his children to the U.S. Well, one of them, if not both of them, might find someone they love in America. And that person in America says, nah, I really wasn't thinking about moving back to Hong Kong with you. I thought we'd, kind of do it in the U.S. where we are. And that's going to be a hard sell for Wu to get his his children and their spouses back to Hong Kong. So likely they'd stay in the U.S. And so now Wu is saying, well, I'm 12 hours away, 8 to 12 hours away from my children. Maybe I want to move a little bit closer. Mm-hmm. Maybe I want to visit a little bit much. Maybe I do want to become a U.S. person. And that's something that this is really helpful for, because if you do have this U.S. life policy, hey, wherever you are, whatever you are, non-U.S., U.S., it's still tax-free.
Right.
Estate tax-free. And, a lot of Asians that move to California, that's when it's a hot property right now. Well, California has a 13.3% income tax rate, top-end income tax rate. Guess what? You don't even have to worry about that.
Amazing.
Right. So you're just staying completely out of it. You can go into the high-cost centers. Your neighbors are paying all these taxes. You don't need to because you planned ahead and planned for flexibility. So that's really where I would say it's sort of more like, a true life insurance. Insure your life. Insure your risk.
Right. Now, what if he does live in China? Is he then dealing with capital controls?
Right. So let's say Wu isn't living in Hong Kong, but he's actually living in mainland. Then he's going to be dealing with the capital controls. Mm-hmm. And so you say, hey, great, your private placement life insurance sounded great, Anthony. However, Wu is now limited to the $50,000 that he can move out per head in his family. So that'd be about $2,000
per year, right?
Per year. Well, and it's also per person in his family. So there's 4.
Okay.
So it's about $200,000. What could he do then? Well, at a minimum, I'd say, hey, let's max out the $50,000 per head per year. Let's just get you in a regular U.S. Whole life policy, 4 different policies, or you actually could do one. Mm-hmm. Whoever happens to be whoever happens to be the best insurance risk. Get that out there now. And if you're doing so, that'd be $200,000 a year. Look, in 5 years, you're going to have a policy worth like $1 million. Mm-hmm. It's going to be close to $1 million, around there. And now here's the thing: in that 5 years, you can borrow against that $1 million. You could take a loan out, right? And now let's just say that it did happen. Your children are in school or have just finished school. They went maybe for their doctorate, and they found the love of their life and happens to be a U.S. person. And now you really want to become a U.S. person. You're looking at the EB-5 program, and it's got that. You can do it in distressed areas for $500,000 or for $1 million. So now you have the money. You don't have to wait like other people do to try to stagger. Okay, this year I can do this much. This year I can do this much. You already have it out. You could say, here's the check right now. Here it is today. Let's go. Now, the downside to that is that the EB-5 is a great program, but it's waitlisted for Chinese.
Yes.
So that's sort of the downside. And there are other programs. So I would just say, what you're trying to, I think if you're in Asia, no matter where you are in the world, you want to plan some flexibility into your life, depending on how things turn out, and depending how if you are going to send your children to education in the U.S., the chances of you having ties with the U.S. become astronomically larger. Just think about that. Just think about the grandchildren.
Once the grandchildren come, it changes everything.
Right? You have all the grandchildren in America. You have 0 grandchildren in Asia. Think about that, and think about how your wife is feeling about that, being separated from. You better have one heck of a social life. You only get so many grandchildren. So if you are thinking about, like so many Asians are, of educating their children here in the U.S., it happens a lot. You know, we're just down the road from Yale, and it happens every day there. You know, every day there. I play hockey with a bunch of guys, a few guys from Asia, and it happens every day. And that's how life works. And so you want to build in that flexibility to say, well, you know what, that could happen. I'm set on living in Hong Kong, but I could end up somewhere else. And so that's sort of what we're talking about. That's what we try to help our clients, you know, get the whole life together and really plan for things that could come up down the road.
Right. And we actually have had an instance of a married couple in the U.S. The wife gave up her citizenship, but the husband kept it, correct?
Right. His wife gave up her Chinese citizenship, and her husband kept his. Now, she was no longer a Chinese person, so the capital controls went away. And things happened to be titled in her name, so everything came over to the U.S. And so that was one simple way of getting around the capital controls. That's one way. The other way is the $50,000 per year. Now, there are more elaborate ways to get around those capital controls, but as you can imagine, they're expensive, and they take some extra special precautions. These things we've helped people out with. There are ways to, you know, if you're looking to move more aggressively, there's ways to do that. But the thing I would just say, if you are in a position to plan ahead a little bit, you might not have to take those aggressive moves.
Right.
If you have some flexibility, and if you're willing to take a look at the whole picture, learn more about how it all works, there's some terrific opportunity for you.
Exactly. And we can actually help with that. We can work with your advisors already in place to help implement a strategy that's going to meet all of your objectives. We also have another video on PPLI, or private placement life insurance, that you can watch, or simply contact us for more information. Thanks for watching. IRS Medic, the law offices of Parent & Parent, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.